Well, today on the Run the Riot podcast, got Bryan Gillette again. What's up, man?
Hey, David, good to see you again. It's been a year since we last chatted.
It has been a year. Well, actually, because I had technical difficulties. We got to see each other earlier this week.
All right, we just talked a couple of days ago, but we did the podcast a year ago.
Yeah, that's it, man. Well, how have you been, brother?
Life's been good. Got the book's been out. A couple things that I've been training for. Nothing as big as the Tahoe 200 as I know we talked about last time, but still some fun things we can chat about.
Yeah, man. Well, I went back and I listened to our previous podcast just to refresh, and I just forgot how good it was. You know, we just had a good time talking about the book, and at the time, I had only skimmed the book. I didn't have it with enough time to read it. Life was busy, and so a year later, I finally got around to reading it. And man, it was good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I was excited about reading it once I saw the outline of it and we talked about it. Yeah. And I love framework, man. I love a framework, something that's easily digestible but challenging, you know, and man, it was good. So before we get into the book, man, how it's been, what, 10 months about since it's been released?
Yeah. So when you and I talked, the book wasn't even out. And so I think I gave you a PDF version of it, and then it came out a couple months later. So yeah. It's been about 9 or 10 months that it came out.
Yeah. And I actually ended up buying the Amazon Kindle version of it too, so I could, the final version, and so I could do the highlights and all that stuff in it, because I like to do that. So
I like the fact that you bought it.
Yeah, that's right. Of course. So how has it been? How has it been received? What kind of input have you been getting on it?
So the feedback I've gotten has been very positive, which is nice, and people can relate to some aspects, most people can't relate to running 200 miles.
Yeah,
but they, it's similar to what you said. They like the framework, the epic performance framework, and what I wanted to do, David, is I wanted to be able to figure out, how do you take really big things and kind of break it down into manageable chunks, and so. For the people who hadn't heard the podcast or are not familiar with the book, I'll just give a quick overview of what epic performance is. So I went out and I talked to 100 kind of executives and ultra distance athletes to understand, how do they take really big ideas across the finish line.
Yeah.
And came up with 5 behaviors, and those 5 behaviors, they spell out epic performance, or, the epic. The E is, how do you envision the big things in life that you want to accomplish? I always think about, when you're 80, what are the things you're going to regret not doing? So how do you envision that? You got to be able to see the finish line to get to the finish line.
Yep. The
P is, how do you put a plan in place in order to achieve that epic vision? What are some of the things you got to do? The I is, how do you iterate to the plan? You know what it's like to run 200 miles. You don't start off running 200 miles. You start off running 3 miles, and it hurts. And then you run 4 miles and 5 miles, and then next thing you know, you're running a marathon or whatever it is. You work your way up to it. So that's the iterate part. And then there's collaborate. How do you learn from other people? Somebody else has gone ahead of you and done it, or been either successful or not successful.
Right.
And how do you learn from them? And then lastly, that's performance part. So that's everything else is the epic. The performances part is, you eventually have to stand at the start line and move to the finish line. So epic, the EP, the envision, plan, iterate, collaborate gets you to the start line. Performance gets you to the finish line.
Nice. I like it. And for those listening, one of the things I think that was really good about it is, of course, we're in the ultra running world, and we eat up any of those illustrations, but it wasn't just about the Tahoe 200. I mean, you used that to illustrate the points, but you also used the people you interviewed, the projects they were doing, things in your life. And so it was just a thread throughout the book. Right. And to where, anybody can read the book and get the points out of it, not be bored to death if they don't like ultra running or something like that. I like that. I thought that was good.
Well, and that was on purpose, because I knew a lot of my target audience, for the consulting I do, is more in the business community.
Right.
And as I talked to people and I interviewed these 100 people, I realized that the similarities between what you need to do to get to a finish line of a 200-mile run or a marathon or whatever, they're very similar to what you have to do for anything big in your career. You know,
Mm.
and one of the, I was working with one woman, and she wanted to start her own business. She was leaving the corporate world and wanted to start her own consulting business. And so, we use the Epic Performance Framework,
Yeah.
and she's not an ultra runner at all. She's
Yeah.
not, and it helped her think about, okay, what do I need to do in order to get this thing started? And so, and I've talked to her about a year after she started the business, and she said, leaving the corporate world and starting my own business was the greatest thing for her.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but for her it was. And so,
Yeah. So is this, I come from a kind of a ministry background where I used to preach and share. And so that I love the epic, I love the acronyms, the alliteration and stuff like that. It helps me to remember things, and it helps
right.
others. And so how long ago did you come up with, the book is, let's just say about a year old. How long before that did you come up with that epic acronym for the framework?
So the acronym probably came about 3 or 4 years ago. So I did Tahoe 200 in 2015, I believe it was. So it was the second year. And I was starting to think about, okay, what are these things? I was talking to people. What are the things that I had to do in order to get there? And I came up with the 5 behaviors. They weren't tied. They weren't named epic. It was other things, but it was still the concepts, the 5 concepts.
Yeah.
And then as I was talking to a friend, he helped me kind of figure out the epic, and it makes it a little bit more easy to remember. It kind of ties into the theme. So I remember the first kind of talk I did to a group was in 2016 about the concept, but it wasn't epic at the time. And then it's morphed into that, I think, 2017-18 timeframe.
Nice. I like that. And sometimes, we share concepts and stuff, and, even on podcasts and sharing with others, and that framework, or that better ways to communicate it, or for people to remember it, just kind of start falling into place. And, I like that. I think it's good, and epic fits. I mean, when you do it, you did something epic at the Tahoe 200. So, it's perfect.
Yeah, and the idea really started to come to me. So my wife and I took our kids out of school in 2017, summer of 2017, and we traveled for a year, from 2017 all through the middle of 2017, middle of 2018. And I remember how the concepts really started to come together, and the book started to kind of put some shape to it. Was as we were getting ready to leave on our first leg around the world, and friends held a going away party, and I had a couple of friends that came up to me, and they said, Bryan, we could never do what you're doing. And it's like, and I'm sure people have said that to you with some of the crazy stuff you do, David.
Yeah.
And what goes through my head is, no, you probably could. And so it's like, I wanted to write the book kind of for those people to figure out, okay, what is it you want to do? And then how do you start putting steps to do it?
Yeah. And I think there are different camps of people. Some people who want to do big things, like travel around the world, which is fantastic. I know you guys, you did it before you had kids, and then you did it again with the kids.
Right.
Fantastic, dude. What a great experience for you guys and for your kids. And amazing. But people want to do big things, and some people just, number one, don't know how,
Right.
and so they just they don't think they can, because they don't have a framework. And I think there are some people that are afraid of the discipline it takes to do it. Because let's face it, you can have the framework, but if you don't, you can have the plan. If you don't execute it, if you don't do it, then it's not going to happen.
And the word you just said, discipline. I mean, that is a word I heard over and over when I interviewed these 100 people. Is, I think, one of the things that differentiates them from people that don't do things like that is discipline.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like to train for 200 miles.
Sucks.
Yeah. You're right. It does.
Yeah.
So for anybody training for a 200-mile run,
yes, God bless you.
Yeah. Why? No,
Yeah,
it does. There are days when it's like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
sucks.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
that discipline that, it's like you're willing to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and go out and do something.
Yeah.
And I mean, when people say, what are some of the biggest capabilities or skills that these people had that you interviewed? I said, they're very disciplined.
Yeah.
They know what they want, and they are disciplined in going after it.
So one of the things, just kind of in that vein, when I re-listened to the last podcast we did, and one of the ways you train, because everybody's got different ways of training. And when you did the Tahoe 200, man, it was second year. People were just winging it, trying to figure it out. And I remember you saying one of the things you did was you would run like 4 or 5 milers in a row 1 month, and then 4 10 milers in a row, 20, and then you capped out at 4 30 milers in a row, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I was thinking, oh man, that fourth one must have been rough. It's just
there weren't a lot of people that had done 200s then. Now it's becoming, now there's more and more people, and so you can learn from it. But there were still people. I had 2 friends that had done it in year 1.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I could learn, and they were the ones that told me about that. Okay, do 430s in a row. If you get up to 430s, you're in good shape.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and that's good. And what we're finding is, and everybody has different, I guess, styles. And so even if they're whatever framework they're using to plan things out, some people, they basically do training. They're just wanting to finish. They're not trying to, finish fast or anything. And I interviewed a guy, he's from around here, who did the Bigfoot 200, and the most he did I think he capped out at 30 miles a week because his life was busy. Now he took a long time to do it, but he got it done, and I DNF'd it. So I was like, it was just crazy.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, is we all have different ways to get to the finish line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, part of it is figuring out what works for you. Right. In order to, that's going to increase. And some people want to go out, for me, when I set out to do the 200, it was, my primary goal is I want to finish it.
Right.
Now,
right.
I felt I could get in the 80-hour range. Mm-hmm. And I also had a friend who did it the year before, and he said, oh, you're in really good shape. You should be going for top 10.
Yeah.
And now, unfortunately, they told me that about a month beforehand. It's like, it's too late. I'm not going to go kill myself for top 10.
Right.
And I remember telling them, because they were part of my crew, I said, when I get to 150, let's talk about if I'm, top 10 then. But I don't want to ruin something.
Yeah.
And I came in 11th. So
close enough, man. That's great.
I was like, I was top. It was the 175-mile marker. I had moved into top 10. I'd passed the 10th guy, and I thought, all right, yeah, this is great. And then he passed me 5 miles to the end, and he was in great shape. I mean, it was just, he looked terrible at 175, but when he passed me, we had a role reversal. So he was like 20 years younger and a rabbit.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And just even talking about big goals, talking about a race like that, it's amazing the dynamics. You don't know how your body's going to respond. And do you keep up with the Cocodona 250 just recently?
No, I didn't.
So Mike McKnight, who was trying to go and win it, and he's done so many 200s. He won all 3 in the Triple Crown that, a few years ago. He's a beast. But he had trouble at mile 70 where he had to sleep for a couple hours. And so there were at least 60 people ahead of him by the time he got up, and he was like about to give up. And he said, I'm just going to go to the next aid station and see how I feel. I'll give it one more aid station. Yeah. So by the next aid station, he started feeling better. And they were saying, well, we think you can still get the top 10. And he said, no, I still want the course record and I want to win this. And something lit a fire in him, and he picked everybody off, and he was almost 50K behind first place at mile 70. He picked them all off, and with about, I think, 30 miles to go, he passed up first place and won it and got the course record on that course. I was like, you just never know. And of course, Mike's a beast, but but it's just, it's crazy, you know.
Well, I mean, that's the big, one of the cool things about doing the long distance stuff. You're doing 200 miles and you got to, let's say 100 hours to do it.
Yeah.
It's you're going to have a hard time somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And if you quit, then it's like, no, go to sleep for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you wake up, you're going to be a new person.
Yeah.
So, and I remember coming into, I think it was 170-ish, because one of the aid stations about that time frame, it was, I think, about 160, and it was the middle of the night and I was exhausted, and it's like, oh, and all I wanted, and I hadn't had really any sleep, you know, I'd laid down, and so I jump into my support car and I said, I just need, wake me up in an hour.
Yeah.
And they woke me up in an hour, and I said, can I have 30 more minutes? They gave me 30 more minutes. And then they came and said, oh, no, you're not sleeping anymore. You're getting out of here because you can make top 10. And I felt like that 90 minutes, I felt like a new man. Yeah. So I didn't look like a new man, but yeah, that's the great thing about some of these discs. It's like, don't quit yet. Just go sleep for a little while.
And, you know, and I told you, I shared with you, I'm going for Moab again this year, because last time when I did it, I got stomach issues and all that. And looking back, I was a wreck. I was green. My wife showed me a picture of myself and I was like, ow, but I should have just went to sleep. And so like my plan this time is I'm not gonna, unless I'm physically really injured, I'll time out, but I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not going to quit, you know, if I need to rest. And so that's going to be the plan this time. And, but yeah, you have plenty of time. And so thinking about that, what I love about ultra running, which you've captured in the book, using it as an illustration, dude, that's life.
Yeah. I mean, we're on this long journey. Yeah.
And it's life, it's big projects, it's things we do. And I mean, you're in business and you do consulting and stuff. How many times have you wondered if you were going to make it, or things got rough and, you know, you thought about throwing in the towel?
Yeah. I mean, so many times, David, where it's like, oh man, this is hard. And then I think back about, you know, there's a couple things I use, and I talk about them in the book, but, you know, how do you put things in perspective? And that, I mean, that's one that I've used a lot. Yeah. I remember when we talked about doing the 430s in a row. Yeah. And I remember I was on my third 30. So, you know, I was 70 miles in for the week. And it was day 3. And I was only 5-10 miles from my house, and it was hot, and I was just whining to myself, and it's like, oh man, it's hot, I'm tired, and I'm just whining. And then I thought about a friend of mine who was going through cancer. Yeah. And you just kind of put things in perspective. It's like, yeah, you know, my legs hurt, but I can be sitting on a couch in, you know, 15 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. What she's going through is a whole lot worse. So it's what are these things that help put things in perspective? You know, I look at like the Tahoe 200 and realize, okay, I can do the Tahoe 200. I can clearly get through this other problem I'm dealing with. Yeah. So it's like, I've been through worse. I've been through harder. So yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. It's a lesson that my kids are starting to learn as well. So I think I shared with you a little earlier. So last year over Thanksgiving, I came up with the idea of, you know, let's do, as a family, I have 2 kids, they're teenagers. So they're 14 and 16 right now.
And they know everything.
They are actually, they're really smart. And
okay, well, that's good.
That's crazy. And they see some of the crazy stuff I've done. And I'm always just like, oh, how do we push ourselves a little bit further? How do I push myself? And maybe they'll do the same. And so I threw out the idea of, hey guys, who wants to do a 24-hour walk where, you know, we don't care how far we go, but we are going to start and just walk for 24 hours through the night, because there is a cool, you know, a lot of your guests or a lot of your listeners have probably done through the night. Yeah. And, you know, when you go through the night for the first time, it's a unique experience. Yeah.
It's something. Definitely.
Yeah, it is. And your mind does some crazy things. And so I thought, hey, why don't we do it as a family?
Yeah.
And we will just walk, and we were going to walk through, or we live in a pretty nice community, and we're going to just walk around it. There's 80,000 people in our town, and we can just walk all through this town and just do for 24 hours. And if we get hungry, we're going to stop at a restaurant and we're going to go in and eat. If we're thirsty, we'll go into the store and buy something.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I'm going to throw it out. And the kids, everybody was like, yeah, let's do it.
That's awesome.
Which surprised me.
Yeah.
And we said, we will do it, and we must finish as a family. So if one person wants to bow out, we all bow out.
Okay.
I like it. And so we're doing this, and because it really can pull us together.
Yeah.
And so we ended up bowing out 17 hours in, I think.
Was it you, Bryan? Was it you? Come on.
I was David. David, I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I thought we agreed we weren't going to talk about that.
Sorry. My bad.
Man,
I'll delete that. I'll edit it.
You can edit that out. No, it was, so my youngest son at mile 25, so we made it 32 miles, about somewhere around, maybe about mile 24. And we had just eaten dinner, and his feet are starting to hurt him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know there's a lot of pressure for him to not say we're going to stop. Yeah. And so I don't want him to be the one that makes the decision.
Right.
And his feet were hurting him. He was in tears, and it's like, oh. And so I go back, I'm talking to my wife, who was walking behind me a little bit. And I said, I think we should stop. Let's see if we can get to 26.2, because it's like, wouldn't it be cool for the kids? It's like, hey, you did a marathon.
Yeah.
And so I go up and I'm talking to my 14-year-old son, and I said, I think we can make it to 26.2. That's about 2 miles left. I know you're hurting and we're all really tired. And he goes, no, I want to keep going. And now, and so it's like, okay, let's get some Advil in him. And, for like 1 or 2 miles, and I'm thinking, I think it's best. This is where you, as a parent, it's like, I think it's best that we stop.
Yeah.
And so he had some Advil. His feet started feeling better. We passed the marathon mark. He goes, no, I don't want to stop.
Nice. And
it's like, okay. So like 2-3 hours later, my wife had gotten in her head, and she's done an Ironman before. So she's pretty hardy, but she had gotten in her head that it's like, we're going to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's the one that said, we got to stop. And the next morning, so we go home. The next morning, she comes down and she has regrets that we stopped. Oh man, yeah. And the kids were totally on board, and so and it's like, okay, do you guys want to try it again? And they, I asked a couple of weeks later, and they, oh yeah, especially my youngest son, he goes, no, I want to do this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it even with that failure that we had, we didn't achieve the 24 hours. I mean, we achieved a lot. He achieved a lot. He actually has more confidence that it's like, I know I can do these things. And cool. I want to be able to do it. So it was just a cool experience.
No, did they train at all for it, or was it kind of just let's set a date and let's do it?
Have you ever seen a 14-year-old train for something like that?
it's kind of sporadic.
Well, my older son was running cross country.
Okay.
So this was something that it was like, we made sure they had good shoes.
Yeah.
And we made it fun. Like, we told friends. So to answer your question, no, they didn't.
maybe next time.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, he probably is true. That's great.
So,
yeah, what did people think? Because I mean, people saw you guys walking. Did anybody see you walking in the morning and then later in the afternoon? And like, what is happening with this family? What's going on?
I was posting to Facebook every hour or so. It's like, here's where we are. And then I would, I said, oh, we're going to be coming around this part of the city. If you're there, come on out. And so we had people that came out and walked with us.
That's cool.
My older son, he had friends that came out, at 10 o'clock and met us.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's like 10 o'clock and there were like 8 of us, yeah, 8 or 9 of us just walking.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, we're going to go into the local grocery store and you guys get whatever you want.
Nice.
It's like we get some milk chocolate, you get some candy. It's like whatever we need to keep the engine moving forward.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
What a cool idea, man. Just and that, hey, maybe it'll be a yearly tradition. Gillette family 24-hour.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to make it into a tradition, but it's definitely on the calendar.
Yeah.
For Thanksgiving, kind of this year.
Nice. Well, man, that's a good way. And we're always, as parents, we're always looking ways to challenge our kids. My adult girls have, they've done some half marathons. My oldest has done a couple marathons, and she did a 50K just recently. And I got to I trained her for it and all that. And it's just, I love that we can pass that down, and they see us doing it. They saw all the training, you put in, and what an example to our kids, because anything worth having is worth, anything worth doing is worth putting an effort into.
Yeah. And I want them to do what they want to do.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, so, another crazy thing we're doing, we're going down to Antarctica in January, and all
Ryan, are you trying to kill your family? Is that what you're trying
to do? They're all like my two kids and my wife. It's like, yeah, we want to go to Antarctica. We love it. And it's
dude. It's
like
great.
And so we're so excited. Well, I found the boat that we're going on. It's a 200 passenger boat.
Okay.
It's got a 1/12 of a mile track on it.
Okay.
So 12 laps, 1 mile. And so I get this harebrained idea, and I don't know where they come from, David, but I get this idea. It's like, wouldn't it be cool to do a marathon on the way down to Antarctica, or down in Antarctica? Going down, it might be depending on what the seas are like, but we'll see. And I'm exploring this one right now. And so I threw it out to my older son, who I figured he'd potentially say yes, because he's got that. He'll say yes to anything crazy. And he goes, yeah, I'm totally on board. I said, we're going to have to train. He's used to doing cross country where you run 3 miles and that's it. I said, we're going to have to train. And so my younger son, who I thought he would be the one saying, he goes, oh yeah, I'm on board. And my wife looks at me like, oh.
She's like, I guess I have to be on board now.
Well, she goes, I am not doing it.
That's great. That's awesome.
And it's like, okay. So I was just surprised that both kids like, yeah, we want to do it. So now I go out, a couple times a week with my younger son, and we go out running we're just going out 3 miles right now.
Yeah.
To build up a base. And I said, and it's like, I asked him, I said, this is total. We do not have to do this. This is up to you.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to feel the pressure. I want you to only do this if you want to do it. And he goes, my 3 goals, this year. And he goes, one of them is to complete the 24-hour walk.
Yeah.
One of them is to kind of do the marathon as we go down to Antarctica. And then the other one is to not throw up on the trip down to Antarctica.
Well, 2 of those you can pretty much gut through. I don't know about the third one.
Yeah, the third one, you're going to throw up somewhere along one of those 3. I'm not sure which one. So, and my older son, he goes, God, isn't our Strava segment going to be so cool? All right, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. I had a friend who did it. He was on a cruise ship running around, and he tried to use his GPS, and all it did was a big line because the boat was. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. So I think it's like 314 or 340 laps or so. So it's like, okay, we're gonna have to have a counter.
Yeah. That'll be Mom's job.
Yeah, mom has already said no.
No, she's not even going. She's not even going to go to support you.
Oh no, mom's going on the trip with us.
Okay, she's not going to count though.
But she'll come out every once in a while. She's the smartest of the 4, as you probably have already figured out. She'll be coming out every once in a while, check sure that we're okay, and then she's going to go back and sit on the in the deck and drink something warm.
I love it, dude. Well, that's making memories, man. Your kids are challenged, and I love that they've gotten some of that in them where they want to try hard things, and I think it's cool that they know that they can do hard things. Like, I want to do it. I can do this. Let's go.
And if for some reason we don't accomplish it,
Mhm.
that you can come out of there. I mean, you and I have both done things where we haven't finished it,
Yeah.
or we didn't get the result we wanted. And hey, we're still alive. We can laugh about it. It's hard,
Yeah.
but that failure, I mean, that tells you that, okay, I pushed myself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
people will say, "Oh, yeah, I didn't finish the Tahoe 200." Yeah, how many people didn't even start it?
That's right. That's right.
So,
And that's the thing. If you don't accomplish your goal, if you learn, you said use it or lose it. Use it. What happened? What went wrong? What can you learn from it? What can you do
yeah,
different next time? We're not always going to be if we're always successful, we're not trying hard enough things. I think we talked about that last time. You told your son something about that. He wasn't falling. He's like, well, you're not going fast enough or something. I forgot.
it was my dad. Yeah,
oh,
my
it was your dad.
when
That's right. That's right.
When I was 10, we were skiing, and we came to, at the end of the day, and I came skiing down. I sprayed snow over him, and it's like, man, I'm this great skier. And I said, man, Dad, I haven't fallen all day. And he said, well, if you're not falling, you're not pushing yourself.
I told my son the same thing on his skateboard. He's like, I hadn't fallen. I was like, we ain't trying hard enough tricks, dude.
Yeah,
get at it.
Of course, then his mom, and then he falls and he cuts himself, and his mom's going, well, what'd you do that for? Well, Dad said.
yeah, but he did the trick. He finally got it.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's all about managing. Some falls are worse than others.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's being able to manage that risk, and and that some failures you can't have, but are going to do serious damage. But most of them aren't.
So Bryan, I love the adventures with your family, and I definitely want to follow along. I hope you guys post stuff. I don't know if you can post from Antarctica. I don't know, whatever. I need to watch for it.
I think we can. Yeah, we'll have to make sure. I'll make sure we post, because
I definitely want to see that happen, and I'll be watching for the during Thanksgiving for the family walk. But
there you go.
So you do business consulting, and you go around and you help businesses succeed, and you do speaking, right?
I do. Yeah. So for companies, generally, I'm doing two things with them.
Mm-hmm.
One is I'm doing individual one-on-one leadership coaching.
Okay.
So I may work with a high potential leader for 6 months and do some one-on-one leadership coaching with them.
Okay.
And then the other one is I'll facilitate executive retreats, getting, you pull a team together, and, how are they working more effectively as a team? How are they thinking about where do they want to go in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years?
Okay.
And then I am doing more and more speaking about, kind of how do you do these epic things.
Nice. Well, and so with that in mind, one of the things I like, this podcast is an ultra running podcast, but we hit on some of the things, about discipline and just mindset and things like that. So how do you, just in your daily life, what is your, I don't know, I like to ask the question, what does your morning look like? What disciplines have you built into your life just on a daily basis that help you accomplish, being a good dad, being a good husband, but also being a good businessman? I'd love to hear what you're doing.
Yeah. So my morning, I set this goal in beginning of the year, and generally I don't do a lot of New Year's resolutions,
Right.
but I do like to have some goals. And so I turned 55 this year.
Okay.
And I thought, I want to do, for every year old I am, I want to do one sit-up. So, beginning of the year, I started doing 54 sit-ups.
Yeah.
And then when I turned 55 in March, I, started doing 55. And I quickly realized that it's like, all right, I'm going to do 60. I'll start off doing 60 because then I have some in the bank.
Yeah.
I like to have some in the bank.
Yeah.
And then if there's a day where I can't do it, and then I thought, well, I can do 60. So I just started doing 90. So now I'm doing 90 every day, and I got a whole lot in the bank, but I'm going to do that every day until then. So first, one of the first things is I'm doing my sit-ups 3 days a week. I'll do some light weights. And then I'm either running or cycling at least 4 days during the week, and then 1 to 2 days on the weekend. So generally running or cycling, 5 or 6 days a week. And so that generally happens in the morning. Now, I've got a pretty good lifestyle situation where it's like, okay, if I've got nothing going on in the middle of the day, I'm going to go out for a bike ride in the middle of the day, and I'm not going to do it first thing. And then the other thing is I'll just look at kind of what's my day look like, and what's on my task list, and kind of prioritize those to figure out what do I need to get done today. And just, okay, I got to get these things done today. If I get those done, then I'm going to work on these. So that's kind of what so that morning, I'm usually up early, and it just allows me to get my head around things. My kids, school's getting out tomorrow, but when school's in, I like, we all have breakfast together, or at least in the kitchen. And so it's just that time to kind of connect, and then they go off and often, and then some couple days a week, my wife and I will take the dog out for a morning walk, and then start getting things done.
Nice. Do you try to, I know you have your own book, but do you try to read other books? Do you set any kind of goal on that, or try to to keep abreast of what's going on out there?
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I mean, especially, and when I was training for Tahoe, I was listening to books and podcasts like crazy, because you're out for 30 hours some week. You got a lot of time. So I generally, when I'm reading stuff for pleasure, or I will read a lot of autobiographies or biographies. I like those. But I listen to a lot of podcasts, as I'm getting ready to go to bed, or even sometimes early in the morning.
What kind of? Because I'm just curious. I always like any favorites, or besides the Run the Riot podcast.
The Run the Riot, obviously, that's first on the list.
But there are a lot of good ones out there, and so mindset and discipline and different things like that. But what do you?
It varies. Like, I will listen to a type of podcast for a period of time, and then I've heard a lot of that, and some of those messages start to repeat, and then I go into something else. What I generally listen to, from a business side, I'm generally listening to stuff on what's going on in the world. Like BBC does a great kind of summary, and it's international news, so it helps me understand what's going on in the world. I like to know what's going on in the market, the stock market, and so there's some stuff on NPR that I'll listen to, and then like the Commonwealth Club. I enjoy listening to the Commonwealth Club. Because you get some of the big name brand speakers, obviously they've got a book out, but you can hear about, these, whether it's a successful politician, a businessman, or something like that. That's what I'm focusing on now.
Nice. Yeah. And I do the same thing. I'll go through, I set a goal to read or listen to at least 12 books a year. And I'm going to go way past that this year, because I think I'm close to it already, but I'm reading some, and then I'm listening to some, and I have a lot of time, on my feet, right, to training. And so it's a cool way. And I mix it up too. I just read the Terminal, or listened to the Terminal List fiction stuff, and then, but I also listen to, just good books on discipline and, habits and things like that. So it's good stuff.
And I mean, it depends on, like, we just spent a spring break in Italy, and I'm really good at reading pleasure stuff on vacation.
Yeah.
But when I'm at home and I read it, like, I'll get in bed and I'll start reading, and about 3 pages in, I'm just like, and I'm asleep.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, okay, where can I read this? When can I read this? And
I do the same, and I'll have, like, where I'll read a chapter in the morning of one book, and then in the evening a chapter of a different book, but they're different, different things, so anyway, just try to set those goals, like kind of like the sit-ups. I want to do I want to read so many books this year, because I know I need to feed my brain.
Yeah. Well, and I think, David, to what you were talking about earlier, you brought up, it's discipline.
Yeah.
It goes back to discipline. It's, figure out what you're going to do, whether it's you're doing your sit-ups, whether it's you're reading your book. It's just figure it out.
Yeah.
And then, okay, how do you stick to it? Now, there are times when it's like, yeah, okay, that was a crazy goal. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to do something different. That's okay to shift.
Yeah.
But, understand why you're shifting. So it goes back to that discipline, David.
Well, yeah. And the same thing, the big goal is this, you're going back to the book and you just break it down, figure out how to do it, and then do it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever that goal is for the year.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And what often, I hear is people, they come up with something really big and it's like, oh man, I can't do that. And my response more along the line is, well, maybe you can't do that today.
Mm-hmm.
And because we think of things, it's like, I can't do that given my current situation, my current knowledge, my current, physical shape, whatever it is. I can't do that today. Well, how do you get to the point where you could do it tomorrow?
Right.
Because we often make those decisions on what you can and can't do based on where you are now.
It's funny you say that because I just recorded and I do a midweek motivation, and those who are listening who have heard it already, but I say this a lot, and I usually talk about injuries, but until you can do what you want, you do what you can, set yourself up for future success. When you're injured, my knee was messed up for a while. It's still messed up, but I'm doing what I can, building up my body, core, all the things until I can run the amount of miles I want to run. And so same thing, you just got to do what you can.
Yeah. I mean, you come up with this obstacle, knee hurts. Yeah. All right. How do I continue? And it's like, okay, do I need to move to a bicycle for a period of time?
Yeah.
Do I need to work on the upper body? Whatever it is, I think you hit on it. It's like you come up with these obstacles. Well, figure out how to get around it.
Well, so you got these family adventures, you got Antarctica, you got the 24-hour walk. Anything else you got in the future? Another book, another race, or just anything else that's in the back of your mind? We're gonna hear about.
No other big races. There's not another book on the docket right now. It's just that, those two big things are the 24-hour race. It's building up more speaking opportunities, and nice. So. I'm working with a videographer now to put together a short sizzle reel.
Nice.
But no, not. I think the 24-hour walk and the Antarctica marathon. It's a little different because I know I can do those.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like I'm doing them with my kids.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different experience because it's not about me. Mm-hmm. It's about how do we make sure that they can be successful, and it's something they want to do.
Yeah.
So I know I can go 24 hours.
Right.
So
you've done it.
I've done it. Yeah, many times. And so it's like, how do I help them achieve what their goals are?
Yeah. Yeah. Coach Dad. Yeah. Well, Bryan, man, I mean it. I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and I took down, I highlighted a lot of quotes. You did a good job of collecting different quotes and some of the things that you said. And I thought about, I went back to the highlights and I thought about, let's just talk about some of these quotes, but there were too many. We would end up reading a large section of the book. I was, how Kindle does the thing where you can go back and see all your, there were too many. And it was a lot of things. And I love going back to those because even just those snippets remind me of the different parts of it. And, time is a finite resource, and how we use it determines where we put our priorities. Yeah. And that's such a good principle. Or people say I don't have time to do something. It's like, well, if you're being honest, it's not a priority for you. And I've said that before. Right. If you want to do something, if you really want to do it, you'll figure out how to do it. And you talked about that in your book. It's a matter of priorities. And so, it's being honest with yourself on that. That's just one of the many highlights I got in there.
we could do a whole podcast on that. I mean, we all have 168 hours in the week. Yeah. And, it's like how you use those 168 hours is up to you.
Yeah. And so I guess I think this would be a good kind of way to start channeling things to wrap it up. But that's why it's important you have to have your reason for doing the big things. There's a lot of people. I have a friend, every time I post that I do a long run or I just finished a race, he's one of my friends from Louisiana. His response is always in all caps with about 14 question marks after it. Why? He's like, always like, why?
It's a
And
good question.
it's a good question. And, you know, and I think like as far as ultra running, you know, there's a lot of talk about figuring out your why and why you're doing it, because when it gets rough, you know, you've got to dig down deep and you got to have something driving you. And I always tease him. I just say, because the miles ain't going to run themselves. He's like, or they need to be run or something like that, something stupid. But I think it's important for priorities and in any big thing, because we all have the same amount of time. Like we need to, I guess, wrap our mind around why we're doing the thing we're doing, whether it be a business thing, whether it be something with our family, whether it be a race.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. I think that's a really important thing.
You are so right in that. It's because there are going to be those days where it's like, oh, I just want to stop.
Hmm.
And if you can look into that higher reason, and as I was interviewing all these people for the book, I asked them, I said, you know, when it really gets going hard, you know, how do you keep going through? And that's one thing they said over and over. And I remember I had a couple conversations, and one guy, you know, he had built this successful engineering company, but he was also training for an Ironman.
Hmm.
And so it's a hard balance.
Yeah.
And I said, how is it that you keep moving on those days you don't want to move? And he goes, you know, I don't want to die like my uncle died on the couch. And I said,
Wow.
oh, tell me more.
I got deep quick.
Yeah. And he goes, you know, I saw my uncle hurt his back. And when he hurt his back, he went to the couch and he sat on the couch.
Hmm.
And then as he sat on the couch, he was exercising less, and that compounded the problem. Then he started to gain weight. And as he gained weight, he couldn't move as easily. And it's that downward spiral.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw that he just died kind of sitting on the couch. And I never want that to happen to me.
Ooh, man.
So when I'm having to figure out, do I get up at 4 a.m. and go for a swim or a bike ride or a run?
Hmm.
He goes, I'm very clear on what my why was.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, you know, their why came back to something like that, you know, something that happened when they were kids. You know, one guy, he runs this very successful organization. He's constantly getting hit with all these little problems. And I said, what keeps you going? He goes, you know, and he's running a business development organization for a large area population in California. And he goes, I saw my dad lose his job when I was a kid, and he just lost that will. And I never wanted that to happen to somebody. And that's why I work so hard to make sure that, you know, we can build up the economic vitality of a region. It's like, all right, that's pretty powerful. It's more powerful than me trying to finish the finish line on 200 miles.
Yeah. It's perspective for sure, man.
Yeah. But it's like, okay. And it goes, David, you're so right. It's that why. Why are we doing this? And you got to be clear on it, because there are going to be days that you're going to say, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah. I was just thinking about, you know, when you took your whole family to travel around the world, I know there were sacrifices you guys had to make to get yourself to that point, just to get yourself to the starting line. We'll call the airport the starting line, you know, and to get yourself to there, the sacrifices, the saving, the things that you had to do to disconnect yourself for that amount of time. But let me ask you, you guys you traveled around the world with your kids. They got to see all these things. And we talked about this, you know, previously, but was it worth it?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there are a couple things that I will look back, or I can look back in the last 55 years and say, okay, what are those things that it's like, you are so glad you did that one. Yeah. And that is one of them. Yeah. I mean, I say on a regular basis to my wife, I said, one of the best decisions we made as parents was to do that trip.
Yeah.
And it was hard. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it was one of those best decisions that it's like, yeah, I'm so glad we did it. There has never been a point, you know, when we were leading up to it or after that I've said, you know, we could have done it or not. It's like every single time it's like, I'm so glad we did it. And I, people come up to me and said, oh, I'd love to go travel around the world with my kids, but I'm worried about, I said, do it.
Yeah.
I have never talked. I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that has done that.
Yeah.
And said, oh, I wish we didn't do it.
You
can always, and this is what, when my wife and I did it the first time we did it, we were not married. We got engaged on the trip and we did it for 7 months. And my whole thought was, if we don't go, I'm going to regret it.
Yeah.
But if we go and we don't like it, we can always come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we never got to that point where I wanted to come home.
And you think about, the sacrifice. I mean, just to say it was a sacrifice financially because it costs to do it. And then you're not working while you're doing it,
Right.
So it's, you've got to just save and grind and all that stuff to do it. And you take your family, the cost is even more, and the stakes are higher. But like you said, you can always come home. And then,
and it goes back to priorities, whether it's time or money. I mean, where we put if you want to, and when I work with executives, if I want to understand where their priorities are, I look at their calendar and I look at their budget. I look at where they're spending their money. And we told the kids, it's like, okay, your friends, they may be getting a new car every couple of years. We're not going to.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah.
We're going to put our money to travel and we're going to get the more miles out of this one car. Yeah. So it's all about prioritizing what's important to you and to your family. And that's how we make those decisions.
Man, 100%. The value of experiences with other people over collecting things. Man, I am with you 100%. I know we need to have some things and some things are nice to have, but those sacrifices and those priorities, top notch, man. That's cool. You got a seed that's in my back of my brain, man.
Hey, hopefully I poured a little more water on that seed.
There you go. Well, Bryan, man, I thank you. Thank you for, I'm glad we were originally connected and I'm glad we were able to connect again. And I do want to commend you and I want to recommend the book. Always recommending books that I read to the audience. And I always recommend like things like Atomic Habits and a few others, but I do recommend your book. I love the way you broke it down. It gave me a lot of food for thought, a lot of highlights. And so, man, just check out the book. Where can they get the book?
It's Epic Performance Lessons of 100 Executives and Endurance Athletes on Reaching Your Peak. You can get it on Amazon, or you can go to epicperformances.com. That's EPIC performances with an S.com. And then that'll link to my website and all my, you can contact me. I love hearing stories. I love it when somebody sends me a note and says, hey, Bryan, I'm looking to train for my first half marathon. Any ideas? And like any of that stuff.
Gotcha.
Because those get me excited.
Yeah. Well, and I'll put links to the book and to your social media. And I know you're pretty active on LinkedIn too. So I'll put those links on there. If anybody wants to follow along with your journey, they can follow along and message you if they've read the book and let you know what they like.
I love it. Send me notes. I love to hear from folks that are doing crazy big things.
Well, that sounds good. Well, looking forward to following your big things, man.
Hey, David, great talking to you again.